Borninski,
Good evening.
Foster,
Good evening.
Ganguly,
Good evening.
Graham Hudak.
Good evening.
Let the record reflect that Clerk Segrist is in attendance. Slavens
Good evening.
and Snyderman.
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you. Can we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, just to let everybody know, we have some clean copies of the agenda and the ordinance in the back, if anybody wants a copy of it. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Segrist, supported by Treasurer Slavens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Agenda is adopted. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for May 10th, 24th, and 31st, 2022?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Segrist, supported by Trustee Borninski. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion approved. Okay, so next we will have public comment on agenda items only. Agenda items only, public comment. I'm going to look online. Anyone in the room for public comment on agenda items only? All right. I will go to the attendees online, which we have 0. So we have 0 public comments online. We have 0 attendees online. Okay, thank you. So public comment on agenda items only is now closed. Can I have a motion to pay the bills?
Madam Supervisor, I make a motion that we pay the bills.
Support?
Motion made by Treasurer Slavens, supported by Trustee Snyderman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, great. The first item on our agenda is a presentation, and it's an audit presentation. So, Director Trumbull, would you like to start that?
Absolutely. Alicia Davis and Philip Feminino, he's got a lot of M's and N's in that name, hopefully I got it right, are here to present our audit results for the year ended December 31st of 2021. I'll turn it over to them, but first I want to thank Sarah and Carolyn for all their hard work during the audit. You know, I know a lot of times we have these great audits and I get a lot of the credit, but they do all the work. So they really deserve all the credit. And I should mention too, it's somebody's birthday. And I'm not going to say they're over the hill, but they might be today. So happy birthday to Sarah for her celebrating her audit on her birthday. So,
Oh, yay.
So much fun.
but with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alicia, and she's going to go over some slides for you and go over the audit results.
Wendy. Good evening to the board. We're so pleased to be here with you again. It feels great to be back in person after doing these meetings for a couple years on Zoom. Unfortunately for Sarah, this is not the first birthday that she's spent with her auditors, so thank you for bearing with us. It never quite works out well for her. But you know, maybe I'll just kind of go over just a reminder of the scope, kind of what we've done, and how we'd like to spend our time here this evening. And so we have completed, 2 audits for the township as we have in the past. One, of course, is the financial statement audit. And then every year the township continues to be required to have an audit of your federal awards. It's called a single audit. And so we've completed both of those for you again and are here to talk about the results. One thing I am always happy to be able to say kind of out of the gate here is that what you would expect on your financial statement results is that you would have an unmodified opinion. It means that the opinion that we're issuing on your financial statements is without exception. It can be relied upon by the users of the financial statements, including the board and management. And so we're pleased, again, to share that we are issuing an unmodified opinion both on your financial statements and on the single audit. In addition, we all, as you're aware, and we've talked about this over the years, we spend a lot of time looking at internal controls and processes and just other things to make sure that we continue to feel good as your auditor about the sort of the infrastructure that you have in place over your financial reporting function. And in addition to kind of the risk-based auditing that we do on the really significant balances, that which is most material, in addition to a lot of random sampling. And with all that work that we've done, again, we did not have any findings this year, which is an incredible result. It is a hard result to achieve, and then to do it more often than not, I would say, particularly in recent years. So kudos to the team again, a really great audit. And I do, Wendy had extended a thank you to the team. We also would like to extend our appreciation to Wendy, Carolyn, Sarah, and the rest of the team, really. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time and effort to get ready for the audit, and then they are really gracious with their time in helping us get through our work. So what we're going to do to start on the formal presentation is, rather than going over that really large financial statement document you received, as we've done in the past, we will just cover the highlights in the form of the slide deck there that you have in front of you. So Philip's going to come up and will walk us through that, and then just wrap up with a couple of high-level comments.
So as Alicia mentioned, we'll be going over the graph packet that each one of you should have. So if we go to the first slide, this slide shows the general fund revenues, and this is the uncombined general fund, so this doesn't include your community center or your cable, which will ultimately get rolled up on the financials. This is just looking at your main general fund. So if we look at that, for the current year, there was about $33.1 million in revenue, which is up about 18.5% from last year. And the increase here is in your license and permits went up about 1.3 million, as well as the state shared revenue went up about 1.4 million. And then recreation revenue also went up about $1 million, as in 2020 there wasn't as many able to have events. So in 2021, with those events being able to occur, that revenue went up. So your largest source of revenue in the general fund is your state shared revenue, which equates for about 30%, and that's comparable to prior years. And then the property tax revenue makes up about 25% of the total revenue, and that was up about 5% due to increases in taxable values. If we go to the next slide, this shows the timing of the property tax increases. So if we look at, for example, budget year 12/31/2022, you'll see that this is based off the assessment as of 12/31/20, which looks at the past 12 to 24 months of sales. And then it's levied on 12/1/21 and finally recognized as revenue in 2022. And if we look, we can see in 2022 that it's about the 5th straight year of at least a 3.5% increase in the taxable values. If we go to the next slide, this shows the total taxable value from about 2007 to 2021. And you can see the dip from the recession, and from about 2007 to 2012, lost about 20% of the taxable values. But through continued development in the township, you were able to recover that, as you can see by this graph, and it's growing steadily. If we go to the next slide, this shows the state shared revenue payments for the last 14 years. So you can see in 2008 and 9, 10, it decreases. And then there's a significant increase in 2011, and then a steady increase from there on up, and then with a significant increase in 2021. So the state shared revenue is driven mainly by the state's collection of sales tax, but also the population does have a little bit of a factor in there. And so there was in 2021 an adjustment. Took a couple of years for them to look at the 2020 census, and they made an adjustment, which is shown in this 2021 number. If we go to the next slide, this shows the general fund expenditures, and you can see it's about $25.7 million this year, which is up about 7%. And there's an increase across various categories, but there is increase in the recreation program as those events were occurring to kind of match with the revenue. And then for public services, it also increased about $800,000, and this is mainly relates to wages and prescription cost increase. And this is because in 2020 there was a furlough for some employees, so those expenses were down in 2020, and they kind of regained back to normal in 2021. If we go to the next slide, this shows the unassigned fund balance as a percentage of your total operating expenditures. We like to look at this to see what would happen if there was no revenues, to see how much your fund balance, your unassigned fund balance, would be able to cover the expenditures, which is about 19.5%, which we consider to be a healthy fund balance and is in line with the historical numbers. This doesn't include any fund balance that's already been set aside for capital projects or legacy costs. This is just purely unassigned fund balance. If we go to the next slide, This shows the pension contributions for the past 7 years. And really what we want to point out here is that for the past 4 years, the township has been making contributions over what the actuary is requiring. So in 2019, it was about 8.7 more than the required contribution. And in 2020, there's another $1 million. And in 2021, it was about $185,000. So this all the extra helps go into the trust and helps kind of reduce that unfunded liability. So if we go to the next slide, this slide shows the unfunded liabilities for your pension and Opeb as of their valuation dates. So the Opeb valuation is as of 12/31/21, and the pension is as of 12/31/20, just due to a delay in the times of the reports from MERS. The pension usually typically lags about a year. And if we look at the pension plan, it's 72% funded and has a net liability of about $43.5 million. And if you look, you'll see that about half of that liability is made up of police, with another 33% relating to fire. And then if we look at the Opeb, there's about $30.3 million in liability, and this plan is 51% funded. And a larger portion of the Opeb relates to general employees than for the pension. And if we combine, there's about $73.8 million of unfunded liabilities. But we do want to state that the township is in accordance with the state's requirements. So the state requires that you are 60% funded for your pension and at least 40% funded for your Opeb. So the township is above that, and they are continuing to make those contributions, as I mentioned, to help contribute to the trust. So if we go to the next slide, this shows the pension plan funding percentage. And so this graph's a little different. This funding percentage is based on the funding valuations. So there's a slightly different assumptions that they use and how they look at assets. But you can see it's about 66%, dropping down to 64, and then back up to 68. And as you'll see, it's as of 2020 due to that lag in those MERS reports. But still it's above the state's required. If we go to the next slide, this shows the Opeb plan funding percentage. And so Opeb plans are only required to have funding valuations every 2 years, so you'll see these go every 2 years. And as you can see, there is a steady growth in that funding percentage. If we go to the next slide, this is kind of our year-end review. So the township has a healthy financial condition at year-end. The long-term budgeting practices continue to pay off. There's a development within the township to enable growth in the tax base. And the township has positioned itself to incrementally address the legacy costs and deferred capital needs and other strategic initiatives. We did want to point out that despite the healthy financial condition at year-end, there are still those economic uncertainties which can impact your short and long-term planning, as what will happen with inflation or as the current market volatility, housing market declines and fees, that all can affect the planning. That's currently what we had. To kind of go high level over the financial statements.
Maybe just before we take questions, if I could just add a couple of additional comments on this last slide. To Philip's point about kind of what's happening right now with just the continued economic uncertainty. I mean, we're all kind of holding our breath here, right, personally and professionally about where we're headed. I think that the caution is important because as we think about the numbers that we just talked about in terms of the funding percentages, I mean, that was as of the point in times that Phil mentioned, right? We know that as we're standing here today, even though the township did do some supplemental funding early in 2022, I mean, the market's just taking a nosedive right now. It's even just last couple of days. And so, we just have to all temper kind of what we're projecting out, the decisions that we're making with the unknown, right? So it's kind of the good news with caution, right? You've continued to do really well as an organization, as a township with forecasting and planning and making difficult decisions, budget management, kind of all the things that have led you to where you're at today, the development that has helped to spur the Canton economy, frankly, and that's all great, and we want to acknowledge that and commend you for that, but we just want to make sure we're all being kind of cautious and careful as we go forward, just with the level of uncertainty, the decline in purchasing power, right, with where inflation is, and And what's going to happen with the housing market? It's been booming, so what's going to happen, going forward if we're going into recession? That's your largest revenue source. So just as you're planning, as you're continuing to project out and make those significant financial decisions, we just kind of want to throw the word of caution out there. And we know that you all are thinking about these things as well, as you're kind of making these decisions and looking ahead to the township. So, so well done, kind of keep at it. But as we go forward, just maybe have a little more caution, and expect that on, some of the funding that we saw as we're standing here today, those numbers very likely look differently because we've all taken hits in our portfolios, right? So, and you'll experience some of that in your trusts, so we just got to stick with it. Over time, we know that it rebounds, but if we're looking at that today, it probably looks very different. So we'll open up for questions, comments, clarity on anything that we covered.
Questions, anyone? Michael?
I have a question. I'm looking at, so I don't have a question about the audit. This is exactly what I expected to see. I'm grateful to Plant Moran. You guys do amazing work. I'm grateful to our finance and our budget department, divisions, and this is exactly what I expected to see. So it was also really cool to look at the funding levels of the pension and the Opeb and kind of where we started. It's amazing to think that in 2012, we were only at 6.7% funded for Opeb. And then even in 2016, so I took office in 2016, we were still only at 19.8% funded. So in 4 years, we doubled our funding percentage, more than doubled, to 43.6%. And I'm weary too of what you were talking about with regard to what market instability will do. So maybe we want to trickle feed this for a little while, but that's up to everybody else to kind of decide. But one question I had, more as a point of curiosity. So the revenue for 2021, which is on page 1, it jumped pretty sizable. We saw almost a $7 million increase in revenue from 2021 over 2020. And when I look at it kind of broken down, I see like $1.5 million almost in licensing and permits that increased. I see a sizable increase in charges for service, administrative charges. We've got almost $2.5 million in state sources of increased money. And then obviously property taxes, we had $300,000 increase because of growth. My assumption is that some of this money has to do with like some of the federal money that's been coming in. Is that correct? Or did we just grow by $6 million from one budget year to the next?
Not a lot of what you're seeing in here is federal. I mean, that's not really where, some of it is kind of what Philip described, and Wendy, if you want to jump in, please, where you actually had some declines in 22 because some of the activity was either stalled or just limited because of the pandemic. So some of it is just kind of getting back to the normalized levels, in addition to some upticks with state shared revenue, licensing and permits, just because of the boom of the activity that you've experienced in the township. So that's probably at a high level, most of it. But I don't know, Wendy, if you want to get into any specifics.
Yeah, most of our, like the ARPA money, that's in a separate fund, so that actually did not hit the general fund, and that's what this is focusing on. A lot of it's the increased permit fee revenue that we have from the increased building, because we all know that the building, that's basically what everybody's been spending their money on, is trying to get their housework done. And so that, as a result of that money is legally restricted to be for building and permit activity, so that's not money that just goes right to our bottom line. We have a separate calculation to make sure we have restricted funds if we need to restrict those funds for that. We did have our census adjustment. We didn't actually receive that money until 2022. I think in February or April we received that. So that's not actually in these numbers, but our big check didn't come for that. But I think starting in October they started giving our revenue sharing payments based on the higher census. So that was a result of just the census adjustment that we had, the state shared revenue. Otherwise, some of it was the charges for services. You can see that took a $1.3 million increase, got almost back up to the 2019 levels. Still lagging behind where we were in 2018, but those are the types of services for leisure services types of activities that people are paying for. So really, it's the state shared revenue census adjustment and the getting back to normal, somewhat normal, and the increased building that we have is the primary factors from that.
When I look at the expenses on page 5, and I look at the revenue on page 1, and I like to subtract from my revenues my expenses to figure out either what my deficit or my surplus is, because that's a fun little game I like to play. It is consistent for 2020 with what I remember us saying, which is that we had a $3.9 million surplus in 2020. But if I look at the fact that we took in $33 million in revenue in 2021, and we only spent $25.7 million in 2021, that's a $7.3 million budget surplus. And I don't remember ever having a discussion about having a $7.3 million budget surplus. That is astronomical. And I just am trying to, in my head, understand how we have a $7.3 million budget surplus last year. I mean, $7.3 million, that's 22% of our operating. That's huge. So I would assume, yeah, building and inspection services might be $1 to $2 million, but that's 7.3.
So some of what happened also, the transfers to the other funds, we had budgeted to transfer quite a significant portion to the golf course fund this last year, which we didn't need to do because the golf course activity ended up finishing much better. So we don't transfer what we budget if they don't need it. We don't want that surplus
Gotcha.
to be growing. I'd have to look at some of the other expenses specifically to see what was going on, but when I did I don't remember what I had for the projections when we talked with the board in January, because I did do a projection, probably wasn't $7 million to the good, but it was,
Yeah.
probably $5 million,
Okay.
$5 million or so. So when I showed the board those 5-year projections and where we were going to end up, I would have factored in some of that, but obviously those are preliminary pre-audit numbers when I prepared that. But if you wanted more information on what specifically happened between those two, I could pull some more information for that if the board would be interested in that.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, because that's huge.
Right, especially considering, I think initially we budgeted to use fund balance, and now we added.
Well, we typically budget to use, I believe, about $3 million of fund balance every year. I know it changes because we do our budget every 2 years and we update our 5-year plan, but okay. It's just, I mean, that's a lot, $7.3 million budget surplus. That makes me feel really good about our financial stewardship. We're paying down, I know we sometimes get accused of patting ourselves on the back. But we as an organization are substantially paying down our long-term debt obligations and in a pretty strong financial situation. And everything you said about caution, I hear, because I'm also very concerned about what the short-term outlook is. For
If
what
it's
we're walking
helpful,
into.
Clerk Segrist, on page 74 of your financial statements is your budget to actual, which will show that kind of original amended budget as well as the actual results, kind of by line item. That might help, just so you can kind of see where the numbers are coming in. Another thing, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but another thing we had talked about with the team was that the township was planning for some additional supplemental payments, and the timing just didn't align, so you ended up making them in 2022. So that's when they hit in that first quarter in 22 versus in 21. So I think some of it might be a timing difference, but I know you're going to look into it. I just threw that out there as a
Yeah, I
possibility.
think that was specifically, I believe, for the police fund.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, not the
Okay.
general fund, that one that we,
That wouldn't be it.
yeah, we hit that one in
Got it.
January. But yeah, I can certainly, get some more data. I mean, we know our part-time salaries was down because we couldn't fill any positions. There's a lot of factors that we knew were coming in on the expense side as well, but I think some of the capital items, well, that wasn't hitting this fund as much. I'd have to pull all the data. If you guys are interested, I'm happy to provide some more information on what actually we budgeted and why some of these specific line items, came in under budget, so significant.
I will spend some time. What are we referring to the CAFR report as now?
AFR,
What's that?
ACFR, the
CAFR.
Act
I'll
for-
spend some more time with that, and I appreciate that. Sorry for, anyway, I'm done.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Tanya?
I have a quick question, Wendy. I'm just suddenly looking at the slide, and what is capital outlay? Can you enlighten me? So-
It's capital expenditures. It's,
Okay.
I'm not sure specifically which items we had
And,
in the general
yeah,
fund.
so it's significantly less this year, like, did you plan on doing that, or I'm just,
Had budgeted for capital outlay $320,000. The majority of our capital programs are recorded in the capital fund, not in the general fund. So this is probably, if I had to guess, there was probably a vehicle that we were going to buy, and one of the departments maybe needed a van or something like that. So I would guess there's a few capital items that hit in the general fund specifically for programs that weren't part of a CIP official plan that would have hit there. But off the top of my head, I'm not exactly sure what those specific items
no,
were.
I'm just noticing that it's significantly less than other years, so is there a reason that we didn't
Because we
use it?
issued debt in 2020 to move all of that to the capital project fund.
Okay, got you. Thank
Yep.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Along those lines, we know that we're seeing our bids come in a lot higher also. So this gives us a little bit of a sigh of relief because we're seeing things coming in double, triple what we budgeted for.
Correct, and I believe Plant Moran Cressa is going to be here, I think, the first meeting in July, and is probably going to be talking to some of that. And we spoke about this, back in January, about the potential need for additional funding, if the board's comfortable with that, with some of these projects from our CIP, because these costs were based on a study that was done in 2017. Costs are astronomical. A lot of these assets and the CIP were things that were deferred from 2007, from the last recession. So, we have a very healthy fund balance. We have money set aside for capital needs if the board is willing to expend fund balance for some of those projects. So I think this has set us up to address some of those needs. But Plant Moran will be here to talk about more of that capital, I think, in a couple weeks here.
Great. Changing lanes just a little bit. So we know with the pandemic, what I've read about is that the actuarial tables are changing. So when we hit 1 million with COVID, they're saying that they're actually they lowered it by 1.5 years for the life expectancy.
Mortality?
Yes, the mortality rate. So I know in previous years we had talked about it increasing, which meant that our percentage was decreasing. But now that they've lowered that, are we going to start seeing that we have even more percent funded because these actuarial tables are dropping?
So if we say, well, people are not living longer after all, it's crazy, that is actually a positive impact to your funding, because, that's 1.5 years less per person that you have to pay for their health care or their pension benefits. So it's like a slower to follow type of process with
lag.
these assumptions. So the actuaries aren't going to just make that change overnight. What we've also seen more is, at this point, most of our governmental clients are working with their actuaries and are using the public sector mortality table. And I haven't seen or heard, so even if the national mortality rates are said to be going down, the public sector mortality tables have always shown that people in the public sector actually live longer. So we could still see that trend, even if it comes down a little bit, it could still be higher than overall when you aggregate the whole population. So I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. But there will be a carve out, and it will be studied a little more granular for the public sector, and see how that comes out. But I expect there's going to be a lag from when that will be. It won't be right away.
That's interesting. Do you also see that maybe as changing some of our insurance costs, healthcare, or even risk insurance as these actuarial tables decline?
No, I don't know for certain all of the layers and assumptions that go into healthcare inflation and costing, to be honest. It's a little bit outside of my lane, but I will say that what we have seen is, before this crazy inflationary time that we're seeing, healthcare inflation was already 5 to 8%. Well above, oodles above what, CPI has ever been. And so the expectation is going forward, healthcare inflation is probably going to be easily double digits, like at a baseline. So yeah, there's, as everything else is going up, I mean, healthcare is certainly not going to be exempt. I mean, we know that we see what's happening with the labor market is hitting some sectors particularly hard. Healthcare is one of them. So I think, you know, our healthcare consultants would say all day long at a minimum, expect double digits for healthcare inflationary costs going forward, at least in the near term.
If I could go back to the experience study, MERS is not updating their experience study for probably 3 or 4 more years because they just did their experience study. So any changes to the mortality tables wouldn't impact our valuation for a few years.
Yeah, and what's interesting is there's companies out there that are, you know, when they let people go, they use that calculation, and they're using it right now, you know, to give lower pensions, you know, walking out the table. So it's interesting who uses it, who jumps on it right away, and who kinds of lets it lag the industry.
I think more of a smoothing on all of these sort of assumptions versus just kind of, because you could flip and flop every couple of years. So the actuaries and, you know, the folks in our sector, whether it's investment rates, you know, what's happening in the market, or these assumptions, mortality, it's a little more of a smoothing and a little bit of a lag, like Wendy described.
Funds are invested, right? I assume that these funds are in the market.
They're
Having the
invested?
pensions, yes.
Mhm. In your
Yeah.
trusts, yep.
That's that's what ultimately concerns me the most is, as the market continues to be as volatile as it does, our funding level will adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and it depends on your portfolio mix and risk in that, but it would be in accordance with the, you know, the plan's investment policies. You know, and some of them are in stocks. I mean, that's part of the deal, right? That's how you get kind of the funding level to where you do over time. So I'm sure it's a conversation to have with kind of the folks that are working with you on that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean,
And MERS smooths the investment losses over, is that a 10-year period now? 5 or 10 years?
5 or 10, I forget.
They smooth, so any significant gains in 1 year, they're not going to let that hit in 1 year because they don't want it to, oh my gosh, I'm 80% funded, and then the next year it dips, and oh, now I'm 65% funded. So they try to smooth that out over a number of years. So even though we're having a large decline right now, they will smooth that. So in a couple of years, when we're like, oh, it's rebounding, our pension funding should go up. Well, it's not going to 100% go up because they're still factoring in the loss from
It's 5
this year.
years, so you'll
Yeah.
see.
Other questions, Stephen?
Well, thank you very much. I always, for 10 years now, have been coming here hoping for some exciting, like, inconsistency, and I could, you know,
Gotcha.
like, use the term heads will roll or something like that. And
You can use the term,
It's-
go ahead.
no, it's the normal boring stuff, which is fantastic, So I appreciate all the work everybody does. And I remember my first meeting in 2012, and you had just come on board, I think, just before me, or, yeah. And being shocked at such low level of funding coming off of being on school board, where I think they were state-driven programs, and they had their own issues, but I never saw numbers under 10% funded or anything like that. And so to finally hear you say that we're creeping over 50% funded is fantastic. So I think that's great. So the only question I had, Michael alluded to it, was did the federal awards supplemental information, does that contain any of the COVID federal funding? And did that make it different somehow this year?
Want to take a quick peek, you can see if we have that federal award supplemental information report. On page 7, it shows all of the federal awards that were expended. So it's not based on what's awarded in the year, it's based on what you actually spend. That's what gets reported and that's what gets audited. So like the ARPA dollars, for example, would not be in here yet because you had not expended those in 2021.
Oh, okay.
So there were, you know, the last couple of years, there have been some COVID-19 dollars, but those big dollars are going to hit now here in 2022 and going forward.
Okay, so we'll see a little something different maybe next year.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Great, well, thank you very much for the presentation. Good job, Wendy, good job, team. Are we going to sing to Sarah now? What language would you like happy birthday in? We know
Thank
4
you.
up here, just to let you know. No? Okay, after.
Applauded.
Sing to Sarah after. All right, thank you. the screen here. Oops. Come on. Where are you? My cursor's not moving. Come on, cursor. Okay, the next item is, no, it's not. Come on.
When do you have to release it, or?
Stop sharing. Let's see if that works. Oh, actually, I can do it. I did it. There you go. There you go. Now it works. Thanks. My cursor was lagging. Okay. The next item we have on the agenda is the Youth Advisory Council. So who would like to get up first and introduce what you guys are going to be doing?
Hello, members of the board. My name's Soraya, and I'm the Vice President of the Youth Advisory Council.
Hi, I'm Miles. I'm a council member.
YAC had its final meeting on June 6th, and I'm proud to say that we have accomplished much over this year. We want to give an update regarding what our council had been doing over this year. First, we have the youth program valuation that we've been working on for the past few months, and it's finally ready to be distributed to local youth organizations. And if you don't mind, I'll come around and pass out our finished product to you.
Great. Thank you.
Youth Advisory Council recently began work on the Fall 2022 Youth Needs Assessment. We have established questions to be included, and we are strategizing to distribute the assessment. We would like support from the board and the community for distribution.
Do you have any slides you want us to put up on this at all, or you just have the hard copies? The hard copies, okay.
And the next thing we want to talk about is our recruitment for the 2022 to 2023 year council. And the applications will be posted in August, and those applications would be due on September 23rd, 2022.
Onto the DEI, for the month of May, we have celebrated Eid, and for the month of June, we are currently celebrating Pride Month.
Please feel free to ask us questions regarding that evaluation or anything else that we have talked about so far.
Are there any questions on the evaluation that we have in front of us? No? So how many people, you said the next applications are coming in August. How many applications are allowed? How many people can come in?
Well, we're not sure how many are going to come, but I feel that we have a max of 20 people is what I heard. Yeah.
How do you advertise that?
Well, we've told our council members to tell people they know, and I believe we are putting up a social media page for our council.
Okay, all right, great. I just read something that they did up in, I think it was Charlevoix, is they took a youth council and they gave them a placemaking, so they could pick any place in the township where they wanted to create a placemaking, and they had to obtain the funding and things like that, and they did it through their eyes. So it'd be interesting to see a physical project like that too. We have a lot of little projects around our parks that could, benefit from that. Okay, I can give you the article. Any questions or comments, anyone? So then what are you guys going to do for the summer?
Well, I have college applications coming up, so I think I'll be pretty busy.
Oh, very good. How about you? What are you going to do?
For the summer, I'm mostly going to be a marching band.
Are you guys going to be working at the Liberty Fest?
I may be, or maybe I might just take that time to I don't know, take time off, I guess.
What do we have? Great, I think we have 14 slots, don't we? Ooh, very good.
This evaluation tool, how many organizations did it go to or will it go to?
We are planning to send it to organizations within Canton Leisure Services first, and then we will go to external organizations.
Oh, have you found the external organizations yet, or are you still going to work on collecting those?
Well, I believe some of them may be some organizations at the park, and we are working on finding some more.
Ah, okay. All right. Mhm. Okay. I'll be interested to see the results and what you use them for, so.
We get to see the results? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I'm just really impressed by this tool. It must have taken some time to put together, I can imagine.
It took us several months, but thank you.
Yeah. It's very intentional and very thoughtful to balance out kind of your 8 scoring criterias for your 4 categories. It's just, I can only imagine. I've done a lot of group work, and I know how challenging that can be.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I like that you lead off with accessibility. That's, the first question, is the program affordable for the majority of the targeted group? It's just, I'm really impressed. I'm very impressed by this tool. Good job.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? All right, thank you very much. We hope you stay for the rest of the meeting, but it shouldn't
Yep.
last too long.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Have a good summer. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is a resolution recognizing June 3rd as Gun Violence Awareness Day and to prevent gun violence. As you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of things happening in our country, and we unfortunately had one of those events happen even this past Friday in our own community with gun violence. So I'm just going to read this from the board. So resolution of the Board of Trustees, Charter Township of Canton, Michigan, resolution recognizing June 3rd, 2022 as Gun Violence Awareness Day and to prevent gun violence. Whereas the Board of Trustees for the Charter Township of Canton recognizes that June 3rd, 2022 is National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Whereas every day more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, whereas Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people of high-income countries, whereas far more Americans have been killed with guns in the U.S. than have died in all of our wars combined, whereas Americans have now suffered more than 246 mass shootings in 2022, and the recent tragedy at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, in which 19 third and fourth graders and 2 educators were killed. Whereas our children have been practicing active shooter drills for over 10 years in the Plymouth Canton community schools, and firearms have surpassed car accidents as the leading cause of death for children. Whereas in Michigan, a person is killed with a gun every 8 hours, non-fatally injured with a gun every 2. Whereas the suicide rate is 1.8 times higher for veterans in Michigan, and whereas veterans experience a 15% increase in firearm-related suicides due to high gun ownership and a lack of timely access to physical and mental health services. Whereas women in abusive relationships are 5 times more likely to be killed if their male abuser has access to firearms. And whereas Canton Township lost Officer Ed Yoxt, a 21-year veteran of the police department, to gun violence in 2021, forever affecting the Canton Township community. Now therefore it be resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Charter Township of Canton recognizes June 3rd as 2022 as Gun Violence Awareness Day. Further resolved, public safety shall continue to distribute free trigger locks to residents for home gun safety. Further resolved, shall continue to provide instruction-led seminars on active shooter survival in businesses for local government and business entities and workplace violence prevention. Further resolved, shall continue to conduct yearly active shooter trainings in public schools. Further resolved, shall join the Everytown movement against gun violence, and further resolved, implore the Michigan State Legislature and the United States Congress to move swiftly to enact common sense measures that will reduce the number of deaths in Michigan and the nation by firearms. Is there
Support.
Motion made and supported by Clerk Segrist.
Motion made by you.
Motion made by myself, supported by Clerk Segrist. Does anyone have any discussion or anything to add? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public hearing for approval of 2022 CDBG program year and annual action plan. Can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Madam Supervisor, I move to open the public hearing to hear comment on the advisory council recommendations for the fiscal year 2022 Community Development Block Grant Program, sorry.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Treasurer Slavens. Thank you. Oops, sorry. Let me just read this. So the CDBG Advisory Council is submitting its recommendations for projects and project funding for the fiscal year 20, oh, that's a PY. CDBG Community Development Block Grant Program. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, requires an annual action plan be submitted for this program year. The annual action plan has been available to the public since May 19th for the 30-day public comment period, and this meeting represents our second public hearing. Director Trumbull, do you want to add
Give a
anything?
vote.
Oh, to open the, I'm sorry. Can I, all those in favor of opening the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Sorry, opposed, nay. Public hearing is open. So, Director Trumbull, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure, I'll just briefly go over what's on the plan right now. The total awarded amount that we received this year is about just over $374,000. What the CDBG Advisory Council is recommending is to pay just shy of $20,000 to First Step, about $19,000 for Neighborhood Services of Michigan, $17,000 for the Canton Youth Connection Program, which I believe helps the people living in the Lincolnshire Village apartments. $74,000, which is the program administration fee. It helps with like the fair housing seminars. It covers some of our administrative costs. $100,000 for housing rehab programs, very similar breakdown to what we would have done last year. That's to help low to moderate income people with housing renovations that they might need, whether they need a new roof, some new windows, a furnace, whatnot. They apply through that program. And if you recall, we bring those forth to the board a few times a year, typically awarding those projects. And then Victory Park ADA accessible pathway for $143,000 there. Director Hohenberger probably could add if you had comments on that, but I know that sidewalk has multiple trip hazards from last year, and there was a concern about that there. So very similar type of program spending that we have had in the past as far as a breakdown between the ADA and the housing rehabs and the various outside organizations that we are supporting. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have anyone in the audience that would like to ask questions in the public hearing on this issue? Let me see who I have. Anybody online? Anybody online for the public hearing would like to ask questions or make comments? Okay. Any public comment online? Public comment online? Nope. Any public comment in the room on the hearing? Any public comment? Public comment. Okay, motion.
Madam Supervisor, I move to close the public hearing at 7:21.
Support.
By Clerk Segrist, supported by Trustee Foster to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Is there any board discussion, comments, questions?
Should we do it inside the motion? Sure. Madam Supervisor, I move to adopt the 2022 Annual Action Plan and authorize the submission of the 2022 Annual Action Plan to the Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Segrist, supported by Treasurer Slavens. Right?
So now would be the time to have discussion.
Any discussion? No. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, let me go back up to here. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Is that right? Yes. I have a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Madam Supervisor, I move to adopt the consent calendar as presented. Item C1, consider approval of an extension of the contract with ARC or ARC Document Solutions for continuous scanning of the Building and Inspection Services Division documents. C2, consider bid award for removal and replacement of Summit Rooftop Unit Number 3 fan motor. Item C3, consider approving the annual payment of Western Wayne County Mutual Aid Association dues. And finally, item C4, request approval of the township's 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Borninski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Consent calendar passes. Next item is the general calendar. Item G1, consider approval to refund funds for the special assessment Lexington Square Subdivision and Weathersfield Condominium.
Madam Supervisor, I move to waive the special assessment policy of issuing refunds to current parcel owners via their next property tax bill and approve check refunds to the current parcel owners for Lexington Square Subdivision and Weathersfield condominiums by July 31, 2022, and to approve the attached budget amendments.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Snyderman. A public hearing was held June 18, 2013, to confirm the assessment of roll for both Lexington Square Subdivision and Weathersfield Condominium. Bonds were purchased for each project, Lexington $580,000 and Weathersfield $785,000. The overall cost of both projects came in less than anticipated, and with the remaining funds due and funds obligated to bond costs exceeding the 5% surplus. Thus, the township needs to issue refunds in accordance with the Public Improvements Act 188 of 1954, Section 41.732. Additionally, although the SAD policy says that in the event that a refund is due to the homeowners, that the future property tax bill will be reduced, we are proposing to send all residents a refund by the end of July to ensure they receive what is owed to them more expediently. Director Trumbo, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Back when the debt was issued and the projects came in less than expected, less than what the roll was adopted at, we were not allowed to issue refunds until we had enough cash to pay off our bonds. That's the legal requirement. This year, we finally have enough cash now to hold in reserve to pay off our final bond payments, including principal and interest. So we are proposing to write the checks out to the current homeowners. It's to the current homeowners, it's not to who paid the debt. So if anybody has moved since the debt was paid, since their SAD was paid, it still goes to the current homeowners, not the people who paid for that cost. And that was really one of the primary reasons we wanted to not hit the, well, there's a couple reasons, but one of the reasons to not hit the property taxes is that would not offset anybody's property taxes until December. If anybody moves between now and December and we know we owe the current people, residents money, we didn't want that to become an issue. So we wanted to really just write the checks, get them cut, and get them back to the homeowners. It's about 200 checks that we would be writing. So we have to do quite a bit of work in the system to get the current residents into our check payments system. So that's why we're asking till the end of July to get all of that in and paid. There are some homeowners, I'm not sure about the breakdown between them. Some of them still had one payment left. Some people had paid in full, but there are a number of homeowners who still had one last payment.
Okay.
Their check will be reduced by what the amount of their last payment should have been to make sure everybody's paying the same amount. So, and we're working with the municipal services to put a letter together to submit with all of those refunds so people understand what happened, why they're getting it, and why some might be different than others. There's two different amounts. It's either the full amount of the refund or the full amount less than one last payment that they had to make. So we're working together to get that letter out.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? Diane?
I just want to say thank you to the Finance Department and then also to my assistant, Bruce Malinzak. I know this was a lot of work, and you guys spent a lot of time, so I really, truly appreciate all the hard work gone into this. Thank you.
The residents appreciate it, definitely.
Well,
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, I have a question. So it references a special assessment district policy, and I've never seen the special assessment district policy, and it's not on the source. So what is the special assessment district policy? Is it in ordinance?
I believe it's an internal policy that I'm not sure, it's been in existence since before I started. Apparently, the last time it was amended was 2016, and I'm not sure if it's an official board-approved policy or not. That's why I wanted to make sure if it was, that I was putting that in, discussing that as far as part of the RBA goes. The policy, the way it was written and the steps, I've spoken with Director Smith, and we need to revise it anyways. We don't want any future SADs to assess a role until we have bids that have come back. So it's almost like it was out of order a little bit. We said, here's the estimated cost of the role. The homeowners approved the estimated cost of the role. Then we went out to bid, and then we found out it came in significantly less after we added contingencies. So the goal is before any future SADs come before the board, we want to make sure we change those steps. And if that policy is a board-approved policy, make sure that gets in front of the board again and revise it accordingly. But we do want to make sure to limit this happening again in the future. Not that it would never happen again in the future, but it was a pretty significant difference. Because anything that's less than 5% difference, we don't have to refund. This difference was pretty significantly higher than the 5%, so we had to make some refunds. We don't want it to be that different in the future.
And can a copy of the SAD policy be sent to the township board, please?
Sure.
Questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G2, consider approving a police policy and training advisor program.
Madam Supervisor, I move to approve the one-year purchase of a police policy and training advisory program from Michigan Law Enforcement Training Associates LLC in the total amount of $12,000 to be paid in 1,000 monthly increments.
Support.
By Clerk Seeger, supported by Treasurer Slavens. The police chief is requesting approval of a police policy and training advisor program for Michigan Law Enforcement Training Associates LLC to supplement the department's current MPLAG agreement for an average of 96 hours per year, billed in monthly increments of $1,000. Director Bao, do you want to add anything?
Certainly. Police today are knowledge workers. They're trained to think quickly, and the landscape of policing is changing. And it always has been, but we're on the front end of it with having a police legal advisor and increasing the type of education. They have to be prepared when it comes to de-escalation, all the key terms that you hear in the news. Procedural justice, de-escalation training, constitutional policing, all these things have to be intertwined in the law and decision-making and actions in the street in seconds. And just the constant, repetitive training day-to-day on these topics and have solid foundation for our training program, this will support that. So that's what I'd like to add.
Comments or questions? Summer?
I have a question. Is this, I'm looking at the contract or the proposal from Brett, and it's 8 hours per month. Is that in addition to what he already helps the township with? I'm thinking of the police guidance and transparency subcommittee, and so I know that's like 4 hours a month, so is this in addition?
Yes, this would be in addition. The transparency funding comes through a grant, and that's been extended, looks like 6 months, but I haven't received confirmation. And that transaction happens outside our organization, so we wouldn't even see that transaction. But this is up and above of his work he already does for essentially the administration of and guidance to the police administration program.
Thank you.
Else? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item G3, consider first reading of an amendment to Chapter 36 Equal Rights and the Canton Township Code of Ordinances.
Madam Supervisor, I move to introduce the first reading of an amendment to Chapter 36 Equal Rights Canton Township Code of Ordinances for a second read on June 28th, 2022.
That's a dual support.
I will do a dual support. Motion made by Clerk Segers, dual support by Trustee Foster and Trustee Snyderman. An amendment is being passed to Chapter 36, Equal Rights in the Canton Township Code of Ordinances pertaining to sections regarding protected status, practices, investigation, penalties, and annual reporting. Director Bao, I know you put the RBA, and I didn't know if you wanted to comment on it.
No, from my perspective, I just thank the board for allowing me to be a part of this. I know Trustee Foster and Trustee Snyderman put a lot of work into this, along with you, Supervisor, and Joe, the Deputy Supervisor, bringing it home and getting it to this point. I know there's some federal and state codes that also protect some of these concepts and issues that are in our world, but this local ordinance also gives us some strength to attack some of the issues that may happen in our community. So with that, that's what I have to say.
Great, thank you. And as you can see, a lot of the changes were marked in red. Anyone want to comment? Okay. Starting on which side? Summer?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who put work in on this. This took years, unexpectedly. We have been working on amending this, Stephen, since 2018?
Yeah.
And so thank you to everybody who put work in this. I'm really proud of the final document, the added categories of protection that we added, and the enforcement mechanism that we put into the new ordinance. And a lot of that is thanks to Joe helping us put this together. So yeah, I'm really proud of this. And thank you to Trustee Snyderman for every few months saying, we got to get this done, we got to get this done, we got to get this done. And we did, we got it done.
Michael, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I wanted to thank Trustee Snyderman, Trustee Foster, yourself, Supervisor Graham Hudak, and everybody on the board for supporting this, but for spending a lot of time and energy on this. Deputy Supervisor, thank you very much. I was just thinking about this in context. One, it's Pride Month, so that's awesome. Two, there's a substantial rollback right now of protections for the LGBTQ community, and things that have been kind of settled culturally are now subject to a substantial amount of scrutiny, which is kind of bizarre to see. And so I'm just super proud to live in a community that is strengthening their protections for all of its members. And I'm just kind of remembering, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago when we were in this very room, when Trustee Snyderman submitted this to the board for consideration, and it didn't necessarily happen right away. And he put the call out with the help of now Trustee Summer Foster, and a substantial number of people who are currently sitting up here showed up to the township board meeting, and we explained to our elected representatives why this was so important to us. And we changed their minds, and they considered it, and they passed it. And now we're the ones up here, and that's just kind of blowing my mind a little bit. And I think it's important for people sitting in the audience to remember that. One day they might be sitting up here too, when they come before us for things that they care about. But this means a lot, and I'm very grateful that you all put in the work for this. Thank you.
Stephen?
Yeah, it was 8 years, and I think it was also June, if I'm not mistaken, which is crazy to think that it's been so long, and I still consider it my best night of public service, and always will, and thank you all, to everybody who's been mentioned. When it was put in place, I was happy that it was put in place, but I didn't think it was the exact right ordinance that we needed, and so, but I saw it as a first step, and this is, to me, almost a good final step. I mean, of course, if there's certain parts of it that we want to tweak in the future, it can be, but it provides protections to people in our community who are not protected under other state or federal laws. And it says to everyone, here in Canton, we care. And I think that's really important. And for those, I don't think that there's been many cause for this ordinance to be acted upon, but if it ever is, there's real teeth to it now and a real process to it now, and I think that was very important. So thank you. This is now the second most important, and assuming it passes, but, so, yeah, after 4 years of, and through a pandemic of trying to get this done, I'm grateful that it's here to be voted on.
Okay.
So not to steal anybody else's thunder, but I was here that night. It was 8 years and 4 days ago, and I remember it quite well because it was actually my wedding anniversary. And I, rather than spend the evening at home with my husband or at a restaurant or whatever, we came here because this was so important. And I really, really appreciate all the hard work that I'm just, I'm feeling emotional about it, remembering that night. But I know Trustee Foster, before she was Trustee Foster, worked so hard on this, and it took months at that time. And I know Trustee Snyderman, who was Trustee Snyderman, he also worked so hard on it. And just glad that it happened back then, but glad that we're amending it now to give it more teeth. And thank you so much, all of you, and Joe too.
I'll just echo what everyone has said. I don't want to go on and on. But I truly appreciate, especially Trustee Snyderman and Trustee Foster. You were the first two to really step it up. And I'm very proud of this board. And thank you, Joe, for, bringing it home, because it took a little while, but we got there. So thank you all.
Tanya?
I just wanted to echo everyone's comments here today. And I know Trustee Snyderman, I think in the beginning, when I first came to know him, he always mentions this, I think he considers this one of his, initial biggest work that he does. And I really, and he always mentions Trustee Foster in helping him doing this. And I'm really appreciative that this has been modified to, include everyone. Which it's not constrained right now, and I really appreciate the effort that was put into this, and hopefully we can, I'm sure we will adopt it today, especially considering this is the Pride Month.
Yes, that's a good idea. That's a good point. Yes, so I think it was last August, we pulled it off the shelf and said, we're going to change this. We met on it, said what changes we made, and then it took Deputy Supervisor Hover to come in and 2 months ago and just tie a bow on it and take everybody's input and get agreement. So thank you for that. And Joe, I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
I thank everyone for all the comments. I mean, I came into a process where we pretty much had a finished product, and that was because of the work that all of you had done for years beforehand in getting the ordinance enacted, and sort of changing hearts and minds, and getting the amendments to a point where we could put a bow on it and bring it before the board for consideration. So thank you all for all of your work in the community and on the board on this issue.
Thank you. And it was great. It's great hearing Stephen and Summer talk about that night when the room was full of people to push this through, and it is good. And it's set a model for other communities too. I'm very proud of everyone. All right. Motion's on the table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Good job. Next item on the agenda is G4, consider amendment for 2022 Performing Arts Center budget.
Madam Supervisor, I move that the board approve the attached budget amendments for the Performing Arts Center budget.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, supported by Trustee Foster. In September 2021, the board authorized receipt of an additional funding award from the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant in the amount of $93,756.13. This additional funding was provided through reporting eligibility and is required to be expensed by June 30th, 2022. Leisure Services recommended the use of these additional funds toward offsetting costs of staff wages and fringes, utilities, and contracted services for shows put on by the Village Theater. Due to the timing of when the funds were received, the $93,756.13 was deposited into the 2022 Performing Arts Center revenue line item, but no ensuing budget adjustments were made for expenses. In an effort to maximize use of these additional funds, Leisure Services is requesting an amendment, sorry, my screen went away, to increase the expense line items in the amount of $47,000 while increasing the budgeted revenue by $93,757. Director Holmberger, do you want to add to this?
No additional information. Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? All right, great. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Consider approving, item G5, consider approval of consulting services to perform 5-year strategic plan leisure services.
Madam Supervisor, I move to award the CLS Strategic Plan Project to Barry Dunn, 2211 Congress Street, Portland, Maine, 04102, for consulting services to perform a 5-year strategic plan leisure services in an amount not to exceed $39,825 to be taken from budget account number listed.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seeger, support by Trustee Borninski. A request for proposal was advertised on April 14, 2022 for consulting services to perform a 5-year strategic plan, leisure services, where the results came back with 0 submittals. Due to an existing relationship while working on the feasibility study for the Summit on the Park, the leisure services staff is recommending contracting with Barry Dunn, previously known as Greenplay, for the CLS 5-year strategic plan. Director Holmberger, do you want to add anything?
Nothing additional. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, all those in favor?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you just explain to me the difference between a master plan and a strategic plan?
Certainly. Master plan is focused on more of the physical assets of the Parks and Rec agency, as far as the planning for the parks and the facilities, and is focused on meeting the specific grant requirements for the DNR, whereas the strategic plan is more focused on the operational aspects and the staffing and how we're going to accomplish meeting operational guidelines, board goals, and that aspect of the operations for the department.
Ask a follow-up question? Will you be using the 2020 community survey information to influence the strategic plan process?
Absolutely, yeah.
Beautiful.
So we strategically do our survey one year, the master plan the next year, and the strategic plan the following year, so that those pieces, all the community survey influences the master plan, the input that we receive from the master plan also influences the operational procedures and operational guidelines in the strategic plan process as well.
Very much.
Welcome.
Any other comments or questions?
I was going to ask the same exact question that Clerk Segrist did, so thank you.
Saves us from having to do community input twice and paying for that process twice as well.
Great. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, next on the agenda, go up here. We have, let's see. Public comment. Public comment, let me look online real quick, see if any public comment. Any public comment online? Public comment? Public comment? I don't see any public comment. We have Cheryl, two people here. All right, in the room, do we have any public comment? Okay, sir, please come to the front. I'll put the timer up.
George Miller. I'd like to know, I was here a few meetings within the last month. on Lily Road and Ford Road South. Why some of the, where the road's been busted up in the concrete there from the winter. I'd like to know why that's not cleaned up. Same way with when you call Wayne County, the job's never done. Maybe you need to use your political clout over here a little bit. Van Born Road from Sheldon all the way to Hannon, potholes. Down at the intersection of Haggerty and Palmer, that's a bad intersection there. And I'm sure there's others. I'd like to know, and maybe we need to put a FOIA out, I'd like to know, since we have a 10-year plan, what it is for the mud dump. I've asked many times on that, and past administrations and this one too, I believe. Also, I want to know why there can't be some kind of shrubbery or something put around that dump, on it or around the outside of it. Some of the dumps, the Waste Management's running, these other companies, they do that. Since we own that, and there's green space, it seems like you would want that. I'll let it go at that.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? No other public comment? Okay, great. Let's go on to staff comment. Any staff comment? Anything we missed? No? Greg?
Anne Marie? We have a little event going on this weekend, known as Liberty Fest. You might have heard of it. It's been a few years since we've done it, but we're very excited. We're expecting some large crowds. Supervisor Hudak has arranged for fantastic weather. It's going to be a little toasty on Thursday, but Friday and Saturday, it's looking fantastic. So it's going to cool off, but it's looking great all weekend long. Staff has put in long hours getting us prepared for a fantastic festival. Our partners in DPW and public safety are putting in long hours to help us out. We've reached out to staff across the township to help us fill some shifts on Saturday as we typically on Saturday have anywhere from 80 to 100 shifts to fill with part-time staff and volunteers, and we're a little bit short this year. So earlier today, we were at the start of the day, we were at 23 shifts to fill, and last I heard, we're down to 13, it sounds like. So 13 shifts to fill. So if anybody's interested in driving a shuttle cart or anything on Saturday, we're happy to fill some shifts still.
On Saturday, you need people?
Yes, yes. So if you are interested in doing anything like that, let me know. We're happy to fill in. Anne Marie is driving the kudos cart for a few hours Saturday afternoon.
It's a cart?
It is a cart. That one is filled, but we do have shuttle carts and welcome tent shifts available as well. But we're going to make it through. It's going to be a great festival. Remember, Friday night fireworks. I know we're going to have some folks that are going to call us up on Monday, and they're going to say, we were there Saturday for the fireworks, and that'll be sad for them. But we're getting the word out, but it's going to be a fantastic festival. We're going to have great crowds, and it's going to be a great weekend.
What's the shuttle cart? Is it like a golf cart?
Yes, it's a golf cart. So we have carts that are running around the festival. We have a fixed route that goes between the different parking lots and different locations throughout the festival grounds for individuals to get you to and from your car and different points throughout the festival grounds. And we do have one cart specifically that is wheelchair accessible. It has a lift on it for a wheelchair, so if anybody shows up and needs has a wheelchair and needs to get someplace, that we can then get them and their chair on the cart and get them into the festival grounds as well.
Do we need help?
Absolutely.
So did you say the kudos cart is full, that all those shifts are full?
I think the kudos carts.
I had the 12 to 4.
You got the
I'm
last.
12 to 4.
You got the last kudos cart shift, but we do have welcome tent, and a couple shuttle carts.
Oh, the beer tents were full. Yeah, I'm wondering, huh? Okay.
So down to 13, so that's doing pretty good from where we started. We filled 10 shifts, so that's great.
Going to be great. And I think, anything else, Greg?
No, I think that's enough
Yeah.
for this week.
Jade, I think you had something.
I did. I just wanted to, I had my hand up earlier too, but I just wanted to touch on the SAD policy. That was a board-approved policy from 2014, July 29th to be exact. I did find the RBA and I just forwarded it to all of you as the elected body, and Joe, Wendy, and Dave. And that policy, although there are some things that are specific to Canton, it is based upon Public Act 188. So there are some things that we have to do statutorily, but I did send that to everybody, and we'll welcome any feedback after you review it.
Great, thank you. All right, any other staff members? No? All right, start up here. Kate?
So today's Flag Day, and I wanted to wish everyone happy Flag Day. Also, hoping everyone is staying cool and to remember that we have cooling centers in Canton. I think it's the Summit and the library, is that right? Yep. So stay safe, stay cool. I think tomorrow's an ozone action day also, so be careful if you have breathing issues. And also, wanted to wish everyone a happy Liberty Fest. And I guess I should stop talking now.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen.
I'll add to that tomorrow is the Canton Foundation fundraiser golf outing in support of the Police Benevolence Fund. So the director and I will be out on the golf course, sweating a little bit in 95-degree heat.
I'll be there too.
Are you golfing? All right, good. So, yeah, stay cool, stay hydrated, and it's a great event for a great cause. So looking forward to it.
So all the board members will be there next year.
Well, and the board members supported us with a ad
That's right.
on one of the holes. So thank you for that.
Diane?
And happy Liberty Fest, and happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And Summer probably will be talking that we will be having the Juneteenth celebration on Saturday. Hopefully people stay cool because it will be a hot week this week. One thing I wanted to remind people, you know, we are doing a lot of road construction is happening right now. And I know it's frustrating to all of us, but the roads will be great once they're done. So please take your time and just be cordial to people. I know Stephen and I, our subdivision's all blocked up, but you find a way out, there's a way out, and just don't block drives or anything. And just take your time and be cordial to people, because we'll get through it and we'll have better roads.
Thank you. Michael, do you have anything?
I do. First, I want to acknowledge that an individual on the township board is receiving an award. So congratulations to Trustee Summer Foster, who will be receiving the Alice Lee Peoples Groundbreaker Award from the Jack and Jill organization, which is doing it at their inaugural Juneteenth celebration here at Liberty Fest. Summer is a leader in our community. She's doing a lot of important work, and she is being acknowledged on Saturday at the Heritage Park Amphitheater from 3 to 5 o'clock. So, good job.
Bye-bye.
Additionally, we are preparing for the Gubernatorial Primary, which will be August 2nd. We mailed out applications for absentee ballots to almost 50% of the voters in Canton Township. We have 35,000 permanent automatic application list folks. We are receiving them back, and we will be mailing them out here in the next couple of weeks. So if you've got those applications and you want to get a ballot, get that into my office. You can mail it back if you are interested in that, although I would recommend, if you have the ability, bring it here into the township. We have the drive-up drop box in the rear of the building. We have a permanent drop box affixed to the rear of the building. And if you want to come in, we have a drop box in the front lobby. 3 options to get us that application, but we'll be mailing that out. Should be receiving your ballot by July 4th. What better way to celebrate our nation's birthday than by sitting down with your absentee ballot?
That's right, thank you.
We also
Summer.
need precinct inspectors. So once you've volunteered at Liberty Fest,
Drive
get
your car
ready
over to Michael.
to sign up to be a precinct inspector or a poll worker for the August election.
Thank you, Summer.
Thank you, Michael. I am very excited that Liberty Fest is back. My 17-year-old is also very excited that Liberty Fest is back and excited for the fireworks on Friday night. We have definitely missed it. I'm honored to receive this award from Jack and Jill at the inaugural Juneteenth festival, but I'm not the only one because Canton Police Department is also receiving an award.
Yeah.
So want to acknowledge that as well for the hard work that they have done building community relationships. And that's it. Happy Father's Day, happy Juneteenth, happy Liberty Fest.
Tanya.
Yeah, I'm also very excited about the Liberty Fest and our first inaugural Juneteenth celebration on Saturday. I will be doing the Liberty Fest Run 5K on Saturday, but I also wanted our residents to know that I think there's a booth for the master plan feedback. So if you wanted to give any feedback for the master plan, this is your opportunity when you are at the Liberty Fest on what you want for the community. And that would be a wonderful opportunity for everybody. I know there will be a lot of out-of-town residents, so it'll be a good opportunity for them to get to give some feedback if they, what they want to see, why they want to come to Canton. And I also want to congratulate the police department and Trustee Foster for this award by the Jack and Jill Foundation, and it's very well deserved. So that's all I had.
Great, thank you. Also, Jack and Jill is giving an award to Canton Township in general for the festival, doing the Juneteenth celebration. So they're very grateful, which is really exciting. Let me see. So everybody be safe and stay hydrated, and we will see you on the golf course if you want to help support the Police Benevolence Fund, or you can just donate it to it. You don't have to actually golf. You can just donate to the Local Impact Alliance, which was a Canton Community Foundation. And it sounds like we had a lot to say today, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Motion made by Clerk Seekers, supported by Trustee Foster. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned, yay.